Good morning and welcome to another ECLA Online Learning Center session. My name is Martin and today we have some fantastic speakers from Knowliah talking about how to cut costs within your legal department. I will give the floor to Sian.
Thank you very much, Martin. Welcome everyone to our third webinar. Today's topic will be about how legal departments can save up to 93,000 euros per year. My name is Sien and I will be the host during this webinar. If you have any questions, please ask them below in the chat box and I will monitor them and give them to the expert as soon as possible to answer. So let's meet our speakers of today, two digital legal experts, Hans van Heghe and Yves Lefere. To the audience.
Hello, my name is Hans. I'm founded this company, so I'm in the legal and information management since over 20 years, 21 years to be exactly. I'm not a legal person, I'm rather an engineer, but very acquainted with the legal business perspective, so hope to help you today as well. Yves?
Yes, thank you, Hans. My name is Yves Lefere. I'm with Knowliah since about 10 years almost now. Helping and supporting legal departments in their digitalization with software, with solutions, with their challenges to become more productive, reduce costs mainly, and improve the collaboration within their organization. And this webinar will be, as Sien just mentioned, focused on how can you actually save a lot of money, a lot of costs within the legal department. But there are a lot of questions that you probably have and that we would like to address here today. As you can see, and maybe we did not mention it in the beginning of the webinar, but the entire webinar is recorded. So the recording will be available on the ECLA website, as well as all slides that we will be sharing here will be made available to you as well. As you can see here, recent ECLA research reveals the actual need for digitalization in a legal department, and that in many areas, different areas ranging from centralization of information to the actual contract drafting and management. So a lot of areas for digitalization, but how will you approach this? You have many challenges. Digitalization is one of them. So how can you approach this? So in a recent webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago, which is also available on the ECLA website, we explained how you can, in a very pragmatic and realistic way, introduce the digitalization by introducing SimSim in your organization. So it's a very clear and defined 9-step approach that allows you to introduce the digitalization and speed up the digitalization within your organization. So don't hesitate to watch that webinar. And there is on the 9th step, the last one, how to marry the legal department with the business departments and to enhance collaboration. There is also a specific webinar that we did on that topic, which is available on the ECLA website as well, which is quite important in the success of a digitalization, because you're, as a legal department, you're not alone. You need to introduce and collaborate with your business stakeholders. And this is something that is not always easy when it comes to, for example, software, because besides software support, you need organizational support as well to be able to be successful in that. So that also, please do not hesitate to watch our webinar in that one. Now, back to the digitalization, the challenges that you have. There are a lot of burning platforms that you might have, and for one organization, it's another burning platform than another. So the focus and the priorities may be very different, but there is always a cost involved as well, an investment you need to free up budget, you need to ask for budget, you need to defend your budget. When you go to your CEO or to your CFO, they're probably going to ask, yeah, that's very, very nice that you want to improve efficiency, that you want to reduce costs, but how are you going to reduce costs? What are the metrics? How can you prove this? And this webinar will serve in the explanation and we were going to reveal the tips and tricks in how you will be able to defend your business case internally and make it a successful digitalization within your organization. So a lot of questions. Here are a couple of them that you might have. All those questions will be covered during the Q&A session that we organized here today, where I will be asking some questions to Hans, who is a digital expert in the legal area. So we hope that we will be supporting you as much as we can in your business case. And of course, if you have any questions during the webinar, don't hesitate to drop your question in the chat box. We will treat it if possible. If not, we are of course available afterwards for any query you might have or support that you might need. So let's just start. So Hans, you was an expert. How do I start building a business case? Because that's probably the first thing that I need to do if I ever think of digitalizing my department. And how can I defend this to my top management, who will actually, in the end, give me the budget if I have a business case?
Well, first of all, SOCIMSIM, as explained a couple of weeks ago, starts all with digitalization. And digitalization is an answer to a number of things, but next to digitalization, you also need a number of organizational aspects. It's not only about technology. Now, in your internal communication to your colleagues, your co-workers in the management, you can use as well a positive angle as a negative angle. Now, a positive angle is about the benefits of just digitalization. Think about 360 degrees overviews. Think about being in control of actions and processes, of approvals, revision processes. Think about not missing expiration dates, always able to find everything you need and able to respond much faster to the questions of your colleagues. Those are positive points. But you can also communicate on negative elements, being recent issues that you encountered, or even larger disasters. Think about litigations that went wrong or very difficult. Think about missed deadlines or expiration dates of contracts. So recent examples of what went wrong are also very helpful when it comes to convince your colleagues in the management.
So it's not only about metrics, there are also a lot of side effects that can prove the use and the introduction of supporting digitalization tools in the department. Would it also be possible to have roughly indication on actual returns and costs that I would have to introduce in my business case?
Well, we have, let's say, roughly taken 3 approaches. The first approach is indeed a very quick one, where you only look to most important efficiency gains. And then we see in practice that it's about searching and not finding, difficulties in storing documents and emails, and in many cases also reinventing the wheel, re-answering, rewriting, re-arguing, and so on. Now, if you count on a team of 10 legal professionals, you easily per person lose 1.5 hours a day a person on searching and not finding. And you easily end up with almost half an hour a day on storing and reading and classifying documents and emails. And in a similar way, you easily following studies of Gartner, Forrester Research, and so on. 1.5 hours on a day, a person on reinventing the wheel. So if you add that up, you easily end up 170 hours a week, multiply by 4 for a month. And if you count then a total cost for a legal professional of 418 or 420 euros a day, including overhead costs, you easily come to an inefficiency of 37,000 euros a month. Take 50% gain, be pessimistic, or your case is less negative as explained over here, at another 50%, at a yearly cost for a solution based on, let's say, 800 euros a month for renting a SaaS solution, and the same budget for your internal support and setting up the system and so on, then you end up with a quick calculation in the dimensions of 93,000 euro. So that's a first approach, a quick calculation on how you can set up the benefits of digitalization in your organization.
Okay, thanks. That's already a clear indication. It's a high level vision on how I could put together a business case. This I could actually discuss in the hallway with my CEO to give him a heads up. But in the end, I will need a more elaborated or more detailed business case. What should I put in the business case besides the numbers that you already mentioned and the statistics that we have in general on researches like the ones from ECLA or the ones from Gartner that you mentioned? What do I need to have as input for such a business case?
Well, the arguments that we already raised on why you should do it and the positive and the negative angles to look to it. You need, of course, support with figures. Top management always decides on CapEx or OpEx when it comes to figures. And in this regard, in a second approach, that each legal can perform himself or herself as well, is look to those three domains. You gain in efficiency, you have less legal external spend, and you have a number of indirect gains. Now, the first one is easy to calculate. The second one can be revealed as well. The third one is much harder to calculate.
Okay, but you say the first one is easy to calculate, gain in efficiency, but how can I calculate this?
Well, as already in the first approach explained, we look to three main items, always. But depending on the customer, the company, we also add other items where currently the people, the legal professional, encounter some difficulties and where they lose times. But in general, we look to those figures. So those three items calculate the number of hours. Now, not each organization has this figure. Those are the general ones that come from studies, Gartner, Forrester, Delphi Consult, CIO, and so on. So you need to adapt those figures to your particular case. And then just calculate with the average costs of the legal professionals with a markup on the overhead cost, and then you come to those results.
Okay, thanks. So that's for the first one of the three domains that you mentioned. So that's gaining efficiency. You also talked earlier about less legal spend. So I guess you mean less legal spend. Then you talk about the costs that I have towards, for example, law firms or external advice that I gain for my cases. So what is it exactly that you mean by less legal spend?
Well, in a lot of cases, work is delegated to external lawyers. Because internally we think we don't have the expertise, we think we have not the time to do it, we are not able to find if we asked it previously, or we are not aware that a colleague has that expertise in his head. So you should look with your finance department on what is your average legal spend of the last months or years, and have a quick review on those elements. In general, rule of thumb, about 50% of those costs could have been avoided if we were able to find similar questions that were answered earlier, or if you could find a colleague who has that expertise, if we know that colleagues from other regions, for example, asked that same question. So in international organizations, we see in a lot of cases that the same question is asked in different countries to different lawyers, ending up with external legal spend that could have been avoided. So suppose you have a legal spend of about 10,000 euro, which is a low figure. You can make sure that about 50% of that could have been avoided.
Okay, that's clear, Hans. Now, less legal spend when you easier or quicker find information to give answers to your colleagues, avoiding having to spend again the same money that has been spent before for external advice. I can imagine that it's rather easy to put numbers on it. Now, my customers often ask me, how can I mitigate risk introducing a tool? Because we encountered some issues in the past where the responsibility was in the legal department with the head of legal, where the end of risk responsibility was with him. So we try to support our customers, of course, with that, and we do. We do have the tools and the metrics to do so. But how can you put it in numbers to be able for them also to give it an explanation internally to their management, but also to their business stakeholders, in how important it is to have the necessary and the right tools to support them. But how do you how do you put it in numbers for risk mitigation?
Well, risks is indeed hard to calculate. You can calculate when it happened, but then you have not avoided that cost or that expenses. So risk can occur in different areas. You can have financial risks. You can have risks due to not meeting contract obligations. You can have risks in productions, in delivery and logistics. You can have risks in compliance and so on. So all those elements, we do have instruments, but if you look to an easy, straightforward business case on your legal digitalization, our advice is to only look to your contract obligations. And one of the most important elements over there is expiration dates. We see in a lot of organizations that due to missing expiration dates, they need to pay another year where there was not the intent to pay for that service anymore. So if you have that once a quarter on a smaller contract of 7,000 to 8,000 euro, or you have that once on a larger contract of 25,000 to 50,000 euro, well, by avoiding that expiration date or to be notified by a system, you can easily avoid that cost for 100%. Now, why do we only take 50% again? Because expiration dates can be wrongly manipulated or wrongly detected. So people can also deny warnings of systems. So it's not because a system can give for 100% a notification that in real life it's also applied for 100%. You're still depending on human beings, so we count only 50% of your potential risks on contract expiration dates. But be aware that next to that contract expiration dates, you have a series of elements that you can avoid by better risk management thanks to digitalization of your legal area, legal domain.
Okay, thanks. I do understand what you mean to mitigate risk. Now, I also understand that you need to have a tool, a supporting platform within the legal department where I can manage legal information. But as you obviously know, it's not only up to the legal departments to manage legal information. The legal department is nowadays in the forefront, is in the middle of the business, is collaborating constantly with the business. So that means that also legal information, ranging from contracts to any type of email or whatever information that is linked to the legal services, that information is spread around in the organization and is not always under the control of the legal department. So that means that business people are also treating contracts and managing contracts, etc. So I need to somehow keep control without being the big brother in the organization. So I guess to enhance the collaboration and to improve the service levels actually to my colleagues, which they expect, my business stakeholders, I guess you need some kind of a legal request portal where the business can come to and ask whatever question they have, and in that way supporting the legal department in keeping control in some kind of way. Is that correct?
You're totally correct. Now, it's an important piece of the solution, of the answer. Now, getting in control of your colleagues is a very difficult exercise. If you look to improvement of the service levels from legal to business, there are a number of elements that play a role. It's response times, it's quality of the service, it's interaction, explanation. It's also a part of educating the business people. And to measure those effects, basically you need a zero measurement. So today, what is the actual situation? Where do we spend time and money on? And you can only measure the improvements after 6, 12, 18, 24 months and so on to really measure the progress. Now, you cannot build that into your, into your business case because it's figures that you will see later on. The only thing that you can pre-estimate today is the time you spend on chasing your business colleagues in finding information, in approval of documents, in revising documents, and so on. And there we see in practice that for departments of 10 legal professionals, on average, they spend easily 30 hours a week on chasing their colleagues for providing information, for providing approvals, and so on. So again, if you calculate that, you end up with a 50% savings of about 3,300 a month. But make that distinction between service levels. You need to have a zero measurement. What is the situation today? And you can only use it as a proof of the extra added value of your digitalization later on. Not today. It cannot be part of your business case except the time spent on chasing colleagues.
Okay, well, you pretty much answered already the question that I had around how to actually put it again in numbers, the improved service levels. Is there any more insights that you can give here in this particular improvement?
Well, You mean how to calculate those improvements or
Yes.
measure the...
How to calculate the improved service levels by the business?
To the external world, you mean?
To the external stakeholders, yes.
Well, basically, you have again a number of advantages like being faster and providing better answers to your colleagues, to your external stakeholders like partners, customers, even suppliers. By that, you will have a professional image. And technically speaking, you are setting the standards towards your customers and towards your relationships. So again, it's a dangerous domain. And to play it safe in a business case, in this second approach, we opt to see it as a bonus in your business case, that it's not qualified nor monetized inside your business case. Now, I can speak later on of a third approach that we apply. Over there, we try to capture, to measure those improvements from the business to the external stakeholders. But in this, it will be too difficult and take too much time to calculate this in the second approach.
Okay, thanks, Hans. Now, can we put it a little more in practice? Imagine I come across a lot of my customers who have teams, centralized or decentralized legal teams, of on average 10 FTEs, 10 legal professionals, 10 legal counsel, paralegal, etc. So a team of 10 people. How do you put this now in practice?
Well, basically, we have spoken already on a number of items. I lined them up for you. So we have been speaking about searching and not finding, storing documents, reinventing, external spend, deadlines on expiration dates that are missed, and on chasing our business colleagues. And next to that, we have a number of elements that we do not calculate in this phase. So if you add that up, you end up with 42,000 euro a month that you can save per year. It's 500,000.
Well, so 500,000 euros. That's a hell of a lot of more than the mentioned 93,000 in the beginning. Do I miss something here, Hans?
No, not at all. But the calculation is just not finished. This is your theoretical result. You need to add 4 corrections. Of course, the investment on a system, the internal rollout costs, and then 2 other elements being the internal probability and the external probability.
Okay, and when you talk about the investment on a system, Hans, I guess it's extremely different between different suppliers.
Correct. And for legal people, it's a very scaring world where you have a lot of suppliers with all different approaches and features and components and integrations and so on. So I've collected some information for you. Recently, end of last year, Gartner gave out a report on ELM, Enterprise Legal Management. And there they indicate that on average, an annual subscription for an ELM solution varies between 50 to 100,000 euro a year. And the implementation costs is on average around 25,000 euro. Now, for smaller teams, 1 to 10 or a little bit larger, you can divide that by a factor 2 to 3 to have an idea of the budget you need. Now, if we look to our Knowliah offering, we count 1 gigabyte or 1.5 worst case per user. So we look to a model based on volumes. If you integrate legal matters management, entity management, contract creation, your legal request portal, and also a search on the file server, and optionally other sources, you end up with a monthly cost of less than €1,000 a month. And if you then look to the related startup and personalization onboarding guidance, spread that as an investment over 5 years, you end up with a cost on average of €250 a month.
Okay, that's clear, Hans. That's about the system, the investment on a system. You mentioned one here. Now, you also talked about internal rollout costs.
Yes.
Besides the system, you also have to roll it out. And there is a question that was asked here by Marianne, who talked about the introduction of a legal operations professional, which is also very clear cost to the organization, but it's not always easy to integrate it in the business case for the organization. And it's actually something that we come across more and more, certainly in the internationalization, in bigger structures where legal operations becomes an actual department on itself, where legal tech and process optimization, etc., is their key objective. But legal operation is also a cost to the organization. How can you integrate this in the rollout cost, and how can you metrize this?
Double feeling on that question. First of all, it's all about efficiency and optimized way of working. But as a human being, you need to feel good as well in how you work, how do you do your daily work operations. Now, if we look to the rollout aspect, you can count the same budget for the external supplier as the internal effort. So we've said 250 spread over 5 years. That means in total an equivalent of about 35 days that you spend with 10 people on defining new ways of working, optimized ways of working, in migrating legacy content, in collecting information from the business, in setting up new alerts, new actions, and so on. So 35 days is a lot and is a worst case. Normally, it's less. Now, secondly, you have your operational cost. Next to running that system, even when it's in the cloud, you still have somewhere administration on your users, administration on security rights, on adapting your workflows, on defining new types of actions, on interacting with ICT and help from ICT if you have a problem with your mail server or whatever. So to be safe, count again about €250 a month, or an equivalent of 4.5 to 5 hours a month that you need to foresee on internal operationals for just a digitalization project, meaning a cost of about 6,000 a year. Now, very important over there is that the end user feels happy with the way of working. As a legal manager, you can define a number of things, but if the people do not adhere to the way of working, it might be useless. Now, that's something that comes back in the next two other elements.
Okay, that's pretty clear. Maybe we'll come back to the question that was asked also later on, if ever it was not clear enough. Now, you talked about the correction elements, 4 correction elements that are very important. We talked about the investment on a system. Of course, this is the basis. You have the internal rollout costs, but you also talked about the internal probability. I'm not an engineer. What does it mean, the internal probability?
Well, internal probability has nothing to do with engineers. It has rather to do with the culture of your organization. Realizing savings, realizing that 500,000 where we spoke before is not realistic in a real world situation. You depend on a number of items in your culture in the context of your organization. So first of all, the legal team, they want to digitize, but what is the real urgency? Do they feel an urgent need? Is it a burning platform that it needs to happen today or tomorrow or yesterday? So is there a willingness of the end users to adapt to a better way of working? Are they adaptable? Because each small change is still a change, and people need to see the advantages of it. If it's not integrated in a communication plan, if they don't feel the need themselves, it will be very hard. The same with management. If you don't have management support for your project, it will be difficult. The same with IT. Even in the case of a total SaaS-based solution, you still depend on ICT support. And a very underestimated element is the content quality of your legacy information. If it's bad information, what do you want to do? Would you integrate it in your new matter system? Or do you leave it where it is and you consult it when you need it? So those are some examples. I have 15 elements like this that are measuring the culture, the internal probability of realizing those savings. In average, we have somewhere a scoring between 50 to 75%. So even in the best situations, you need to multiply by 0.75. On average, in your business case, multiply by 50%. And I had once, that's a really exception, once a case in an organization, a very special organization, where that culture scoring on such a digitalization project was only 25%. So in that case, you need to multiply by 0.25 to have a real understanding or estimate of being realistic in your estimation, in your describing your business case.
That's actually quite important, I guess, for, let's say, a CLO or a legal director who needs to present his business case to make it tangible, because you have the metrics that prove efficiency, etc. But if you have like number that you can, or an indicator that you can use that is corresponding to your own organization, which is obviously different than another one, and where you know that there is a low culture of digitalization, then you can actually make the business case more realistic. But that is about the internal probability. You also talked about the external probability. So what do you mean by that?
Well, as you explained, you need to make your business case trustable. And internal probability looks to the culture, the situation of your organization. External probability looks to your partner, looks to your solution that you want to integrate. So you can look to the delivered SLA, service level agreement, but in many cases, it's linked to the features. What do you need in your new way of working to optimize your efficiency, your service levels internally to the colleagues and so on? And there we see that due to the diversity of solutions in the market, not all solutions offer the same level of features. And if we take Knowliah as a reference case, if you allow me, we see that depending on the solutions, you end up with 10%, maximum 50% of the feature set, because they all have a history, a background, and that they are only looking to certain elements in your way of working. And they never look to a complete scope of digitalization of a legal team. So For Knowliah, you can multiply by 100, but you need to review the features that you need and that are offered to have a kind of external probability that that solution that you are choosing will deliver the savings that you are looking for.
Okay, but how do I know? And I think maybe with this supporting slide, you can maybe elaborate on that one, because I'm not a software engineer. I'm in a legal. I have a legal background. I have my legal work. I know I need supporting tools, but I don't know the features, and I don't know what features are in the market and are possible. How do I see where I need to go to be able to have a tool that actually supports my department and my organization?
Well, on the left, you have a number of items that we encounter daily with customers. Those are the elements that a customer is looking for. Going from minimal efforts in storing documents and emails, integrated OCR, up to managing stakeholders, legal matters, your delegation of authority, up to generating documents, creating documents integrated in Word, and so on. So you need to make your list for yourself. What is crucial as elements that we need to our targeted objectives? And then we did over here an exercise on what are the different approaches we see in the market. You have a typical Excel and a folder structure with files, emails in the mail server. You have an approach based on enterprise search. There are a number of CRM case-alike applications that are focusing on the contacts. You have document management and workflow approaches. You have a new type of contract creations tools in the web. And you can also integrate a number of them. And if we look to what we offer with Enterprise Legal Management of Knowliah, we looked from the beginning to what do legal teams need. We listed this up and made sure that all those elements were present in the solution.
Okay, so just to have an understanding on the different approaches here, when you mentioned the first one, an Excel sheet with my different matters, probably my contracts, and then I have a classic folder structure with all my files and maybe emails that are stored in there, but mostly emails are still in Outlook or Gmail accounts, etc. So this is an approach that I come across a lot, because most organizations by default work like this, know that it's not working anymore, so they look towards other solutions. When you talk enterprise search, what I do understand there is that I continue the way I do, working with my Excel, etc., but that I have the possibility to make it searchable, make it easy accessible. But that doesn't mean that it's better organized. A CRM case-like application, I come across law firms a lot, so not corporate legal departments, but law firms. Is it more that approach that you mean by that? So a classic case management system where I can manage my customers and invoicing, etc., because that's not really something that would be usable for my organization as a legal department.
No, because there you quite often lack the capabilities on documents, on emails, on document generation. So you can define a case, you can define a customer like lawyers do. You can register your time, but easily dragging and dropping documents, emails, automatic archiving and integrating, detection of expiration dates and so on are all things you need to enter manually in fields. Really, you are locking up your documents, your communication, your emails into a record. And by that, it's no longer accessible and usable for other contexts.
Okay, I do get it. In some kind of way, managing cases or matters is important, but it's obviously not limited to that, because the next one is document management and workflow. yeah, I do need this. I don't have it when I have just an Excel sheet and folders. But if I have an application, a software tool that focuses on document management and workflow application, like SharePoint, for example, I might be missing the case approach.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. As you mentioned, contract creation tools. Every day there is a new contract creation tool that is rising up. So it's something that is very active today. The legal tech world is very much focusing on contract creation. But the frustration that I come across my customers and the organizations that I talk to is that, okay, I have a contract creation tool, which is important, but if all the rest behind is still a mess, I don't have the input or the necessary input to make it successful, such an application. So should I first focus on my organization, my classification, my accessibility, etc., before introducing such a tool?
Well, basically, you need your base, your fundamentals, and your fundamentals in a legal team is your case management. But the case for legal is a huge volume of documents, a huge volume of emails. So the ideal is a combination of case management and document management, workflow management combined. And if you can enlarge that with enterprise search so that you are sure as a legal that you never miss information that's residing somewhere in the organization, then you have your fundamentals. And then you can build on towards contract creation, towards a legal request portal, towards extensive reporting, towards KPI monitoring, and so on. But your base is really a hybrid solution where you combine case, document, and workflow and enterprise search together.
Okay. So as I can see then, Hans, and happy to know that there are tools in the market that actually cover the broad range of key functionalities that are needed, but also maybe in an approach that is phased. Not everything is needed in beginning, so you need to grow with such an application. So that's very nice, but are we sure that we do not miss anything? Are there no surprises left?
No more surprises, only two precautions. First of all, everybody of us knows somewhere colleagues that are very negative for each type of change or new system or whatever. It's never good. So you have very pessimistic point of views with a number of colleagues as well. For them, you should reduce your 50% savings towards 25% savings. So that's one element. A second element is double your investment cost. Not because the supplier is not trustable, but because your world will evolve. You will have bigger volumes. You will have a need for other modules, for other features that you didn't think about today. So foresee a budget where your external costs towards your suppliers are doubled. So those are the two main precautions that you should add in your business case. So is everything clear for you, Yves?
Pretty much, Hans. So let me just resume. If I understood well, and please correct me if I'm wrong, total potential savings that I could realize in introducing the right tool in my legal department of, on average, 10 people. This is the assumption that we take here. 10 people introducing a new digital tool. Total potential savings of €500,000, which is incredible. If I go to my CEO tomorrow and explain him that, he should be signing and giving me flowers, I guess.
But he will not believe you.
He will not believe me. But this is actually based on realistic metrics. But
yep.
so, if I reduce those savings with a pessimistic 25%, I come up to 250,000 euros savings that I can realize. Okay. With a yearly total operational cost, which is explained before, I come to 230K, and then we just mentioned the internal probability, the external probability, and the extra solution budget that can be foreseen to make it a total realistic case. I come up to just not 100,000 savings a year, which is then in that case very realistic, can be put it against the investment that is done, which is already calculated in it. So it's an actual 100 or almost 100,000 euros that I can save bottom line in my department, which should be my case to my management.
That was a very good recap, Yves. Now you need to add that you took into account the very pessimistic view on your savings.
Yeah, so it's the worst case that I mentioned here. Then
yeah, and basically, if you look to the soft elements like improved service level, better risk management, improved image, better decisions, and so on, you can even double it. So in reality, your real savings, but harder to prove. But we see as a rule of thumb that you can double that 93 as being a realistic expectation. But again, those soft elements will never be calculated. There are very few organizations that are willing to do zero measurement and then measure each 6 months the progress on those soft elements. So you need to mention that, you need to argue on that, but they will never be counted.
Okay, thanks for that, Hans. Now, a lot of people are assisting the webinar live now. A lot of people will view it afterwards. They will have the slides, so they will have some input to make their own business case. But I can imagine that's not always easy for them. So, are you able, you or your organization, to support in some kind of way such a business case, or is it something that you leave up to the business analysts of the organizations?
Yes, of course. So we discussed the first approach where you have a quick view, something you can do on 5 minutes time frame. The second approach is what we explained up till now, and that each legal professional can apply himself for his or her organization. If a customer asks us to build a business case, we do it a little bit more elaborated. That's our third approach. And then we have a questionnaire on a number of elements, as well on measurable as hard to measure soft elements, soft gains, where we look to the exact situation within the organization. So we make a distinction between efficiency and indirect gains and try to measure them. What is the situation? What is the potential within the organization? And then you have a much more detailed business case where even financial analysts can find what they need when they are looking to investment cases.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Hans. Very clear. I think we can wrap up here. I just want to come back to a question that was asked earlier by Lean on sharing documents from Gartner, Forrester, etc. I would love to, but we don't have the rights to share those documents. So you need to have a subscription with those organizations to be able to access those documents. Of course, if you mail us or call us, we can obviously give you some more insights on that one if you would like to request it. And that's also for other people, of course. Do not hesitate to contact us.
Okay, thank you very much, Yves and Hans. It was a very interesting webinar, and we would also love to see all the attendants of today back at our next webinar in September. So what's very important that you keep an eye on the ECLA Online Learning Center page. You can see the link already on the presentation, and we hope you've enjoyed and you've learned a lot during this webinar. And if you want to stay in touch, it's absolutely not a problem at all. You can mail us, you can give us a call if you have questions about this presentation. The presentation will be sent by ECLA to everyone who registered for this webinar. So thank you very much, and back to you, Martin.
Thank you, Hans and Yves and Sien for yet another captivating session. As Sien mentioned, do please visit our website to find out more information for upcoming sessions. We do have all the recordings there as well. So if you would like to re-listen to certain excerpts from past webinars, feel free to do so at our website. And then I hope to see you again in our next session. Thank you again, and then goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.